All right, time now for Stardom and Situm, presented by California Almonds. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Live. It's Wednesday, so that means the fabulous one, Michael Fabiano, is here with his list of starts and sits for the week. Be sure to check out the entire column, one of the most read columns in all of the fantasy world, NFL.com/start-sit. Fabs, we're going to start at the quarterback position. Who do you like this week?
Well, Phillip Rivers was a stardom last week, and guys, I'm keeping him right there in Week 5 in a great matchup against the Steelers. And Rivers, James, has actually had more passing yards than any other quarterback in the league so far. And at home, he's averaging over 23 fantasy points per game. He also has 2+ touchdown passes in 3 of his last 4 games and 8 overall. I like the matchup, and I like to start a quarterback on Monday Night Football. Love it. Start Phillip Rivers, a player that I am benching, another California quarterback, Colin Kaepernick. Now, with 4 teams off and other quarterbacks injured, people may look at the name and think, hey, I'm going to start Colin Kaepernick. Please don't do that. Look at his numbers. 2 touchdown passes, 5 picks in his last 4 games. The Giants have allowed 2+ touchdown passes once in a game this year. And to be quite honest with you, Kaepernick's just been rotten this year. If you talk to Matt Money Smith, who did their game last week, Kaepernick was overthrowing his wide receivers. His confidence is certainly an issue right now. And, boy, could we be close to Blaine Gabbert coming out and playing for the Niners?
No.
Well, Kaepernick shouldn't be playing for your fantasy team regardless.
Well, there you go. We're almost at the point where I think JT O'Sullivan could be a good start.
Hey, I remember JT O'Sullivan.
All right, how about give me a guy that sticks out here on your Stardom and Situm?
Well, Peyton Manning is someone who people might think is obvious, but did you know, Mr. Coe, that he's 23rd in fantasy points among quarterbacks right now?
I'm not surprised, but I didn't know he was that low.
I've got to tell you to start him. I like him this week against the Raiders.
All right, speaking of, how about Latavius Murray there in Oakland? Start to sit.
What a smooth transition right there. People may
think
that this matchup is a negative one for Murray, but it's actually pretty good. Murray is going to have something to prove after an absolute stinker last week against the Bears. 14+ fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games, and the Broncos have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns in their last 3 road games. Murray should be the centerpiece of this offense. The Broncos' defense is a good play, but I don't like their run defense right now. I'm starting Latavius Murray. Now let's flip things over to C.J. Anderson. Now, James, if you had told me 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago that I was going to say sit C.J. Anderson against the Raiders, you know what, man? I would have fitted you for a straitjacket. I wouldn't have believed it, but he has struggled this year big time. In fact, he's been one of the 2 or 3 biggest busts in fantasy football, and the Raiders' run defense actually hasn't been terrible, allowing an average of fewer than 11 fantasy points per game to the position over the last 2 weeks. If you start a Broncos running back, Ronnie Hillman should be that running back. Akbar would be happy about that.
Absolutely. San Diego State's finest. All right, who sticks out here in regards to your running back position?
TJ Yeldon is a featured back who is going to start climbing, start him against the Buccaneers. And Deion Lewis, a guy who wasn't even drafted, play him against the Cowboys. They have been awful against running backs over their last 2 games.
All right, let's flip it to the wide receiver position. Julian Edelman, starter sit.
Start him and start him with confidence. I actually still get questions on Twitter about whether or not people should start Edelman. He is a targets machine. He's averaging 10 catches a game this year. That's most in the National Football League.
That's insane.
The Cowboys' defense, I know they're getting Greg Hardy back, so maybe they'll have a little bit more of a pass rush, but it is all banged up, and Brandon Carr and Mo Claiborne have not really been consistent. Edelman is going to see at least 15 targets in this game, if not more. Start him and start him with confidence. Now, we're talking about another Raider here, Amari Cooper.
Love it.
But I'm saying if you have wide receiver depth, to sit him. The Broncos have been awesome against wide receivers. Look at the numbers, or lack thereof, that #1 wide receivers have put up against Denver this year. They've allowed 1 receiving touchdown to wide receivers. They're allowing an average of fewer than 14 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. So, again, while I like Cooper long-term and he's a great rookie who's going to be a monster in this league, this is a tough matchup. If you've got depth, I'm thinking about sitting him.
All right. How about the rest of your wide receivers? Start them and sit them list here.
Travis Benjamin is a top 10 fantasy wide receiver overall. I like him as a 3 against Baltimore. And Kendall Wright, you might think this is a good matchup. Okay. Look at the numbers of #1 wide receivers facing the Bills. Other than Julian Edelman, they've done nothing, and that includes Odell Beckham Jr. and T.Y. Hilton.
All right, good info there. How about at the tight end position? Tyler Eifert, starter sit.
One of my favorite sleepers coming into the year, and Eifert has definitely delivered. And you may look at this matchup, James, and think, wait a minute, this is the Seahawks. They're an awesome defense. Well, they are. But against tight ends, not so much. In fact, they have given up an average of right around 9 fantasy points per game to tight ends. And guys, 9 points from your tight end is pretty darn good. And how's this for a stat? 13 of the last 19 receiving touchdowns the Seahawks have been allowed have gone to tight ends.
No, really?
Start Tyler Eifert with confidence. Another tight end that I liked coming into the year, and he's been a massive disappointment, is Zach Ertz. And this is a really good matchup. The Saints have not been good against tight ends, but guys, I just don't trust him. 1 touchdown in his last 14 games. 90-plus receiving yards once in his whole career. Wow. I am starting Jordan Matthews. I like Sam Bradford. You're starting DeMarco Murray. I can't trust Zach Ertz.
He's just not on the field enough. His snap percentage, snap count
and
percentage
Brent
is just
Selleck
too
is
low.
putting a dent in that because Ertz can't block.
All right, so there you go. All right, anyone else jump out of here? Antonio Gates.
He's back.
He's back, baby.
Start him, and of course, a start him and sit him segment would not be complete without Owen Daniels and a tight end starting against the Raiders. We've
Even
talked a lot of
Virgil
Raiders.
Green might get in on the act there.
Who knows?
A backup tight end for the Broncos.
Owen Daniels is widely available. If you need a tight end, pick him up and start him.
100% for sure. All right, that was Stardom and Sit 'em presented by California Almonds.